Tonight, fallen soldiers come home. The President and First Lady meet with the families of the U.S. service members killed in a drone attack in Jordan. Plus, the case for presidential immunity or not.
The Constitution doesn't really provide for immunity one way or the other.
And ministry on the front lines.
Pray to them, lead them to Jesus, take their hands and literally pray and they accept Jesus Christ in their hearts.
A look at the women chaplains serving in Ukraine. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Tonight, the first reports of retaliatory strikes beginning in Syria after 3 U.S. Army soldiers were killed in a drone strike last week from an Iran-backed militia in Jordan. Today, their bodies returned home. The families of Sergeant Kennedy Sanders, Sergeant Breonna Moffett, and Sergeant William Rivers were joined by President Biden and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in a dignified transfer ceremony at Dover Air Force Base. The deadly explosive drone was determined to be Iranian-made, launched by an Islamic militia group, Iran proxies in Syria as well as Iraq and possibly Yemen. All now on the list of likely retaliatory targets. In other news, a bombshell admission in the 2020 Georgia election interference case being brought against former President Trump. The Atlanta area district attorney prosecuting Trump is admitting to an inappropriate relationship with the prosecutor in the case. Fulton County DA Fani Willis responding today, nearly a month after she was accused of an improper relationship with a special prosecutor she hired to indict Trump and 18 others over racketeering charges last summer. She says the relationship did not taint proceedings. Her response comes on the same day House Republicans issued a subpoena against Willis over allegations she used federal funds to conduct the investigation into Trump. In a statement to today's House subpoena, Willis's office called those claims baseless and without merit. Trump's legal team is using an argument of presidential immunity in this Georgia case. And in a separate federal case in Washington, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is facing a similar question. As a former U.S. president, is Donald Trump immune from criminal prosecution? It's been more than 3 weeks now since judges heard arguments and still no ruling, even as the larger criminal trial becomes further delayed by the appeal. Washington correspondent Caitlin Burke has the details.
The immunity question is part of the larger federal case accusing Trump of attempting to overturn the 2020 election results. His legal team maintains a president is immune from criminal prosecution for any official acts taken while in office. The presiding district judge on the case rejected that argument, so Trump's team appealed it to the D.C. Circuit.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to seal Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
While the appeals court judges seemed skeptical of this stance, Trump is buckling down as they continue deliberations. In a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, the former president wrote in part, quote, "Even events that cross the line must fall under total immunity, or it will be years of trauma trying to determine good from bad." This interpretation has led to various reactions. Political theorist Dr. Paul Miller with Georgetown University says a willingness to hold former office holders accountable is vital to sustaining democracy.
The human heart is sinful, that we are tempted, particularly when there's no one watching or there's no one to hold us accountable. And if you have a leader with the awesome powers of the presidency and they are not accountable to law, to the voter, to anything, I can guarantee you that sooner or later somebody will abuse that power and abuse it in terrible ways.
Still, legal experts admit the Constitution appears unclear on the topic.
The Constitution doesn't really provide for immunity one way or the other. The Supreme Court has recognized in a case called Nixon versus Fitzgerald, a 1982 case, that presidents can be immune from civil lawsuits so long as their actions fit within the quote-unquote outer perimeter of their official duties. And that has been largely assume that it applies to criminal prosecution as well.
John Malcolm, vice president for the Heritage Foundation's Institute for Constitutional Government, says both sides testifying before the D.C. Circuit Court presented worst-case scenarios of a ruling not in their favor.
There'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box.
President sells a pardon, resigns, or is not impeached, not a crime. I think that is extraordinarily frightening future.
While a decision from the D.C. Circuit Court could come at any time, the case will likely be appealed to the Supreme Court by whichever side loses. All trial deadlines for the larger criminal case now suspended while it remains on appeal. This delay could work in Trump's favor, with one school of thought being if Donald Trump were to win the election before any federal convictions, he could order the Justice Department to drop all cases against him or even pardon himself. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
And thank you, Caitlin. In economic news tonight, today's monthly jobs report shows a booming economy soaring past expectations. The burst of hiring last month shows an economy blasting through the highest interest rates in 2 decades. That spells trouble for the Federal Reserve, still trying to deal with inflation. But it does show the U.S. did better than just avoiding a recession, adding hundreds of thousands of jobs. With 353,000 jobs added to the U.S. economy in January, about twice what economists expected. The unemployment rate is sticking at 3.7%, just above a 50-year low. With us now, Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate. Mark, good to see you this Friday. So how do you think the Fed is looking at this strong labor report as the central bank still works to bring down inflation?
The Fed does not want to see a weaker job market. What it does want to see, Jenna, is less inflation. And it has been seeing that in the sense of inflation trends coming down. There is one data point within this remarkably robust jobs report demonstrating the resilience of the U.S. economy, and that is a 4.5% rise in wages over the past year. I think that can be explained away in a way that tells us that it's unlikely to be sustained, let's say, in the coming months. It's a function of 2 things: the UAW contracts that were put into place after what we know were strikes that were, a bit volatile and potentially affecting automobile production last year. 22 states, dozens of localities put increases in their minimum wages into place with the new year. And so I don't think this is inflationary, but it's obviously something that we'll watch.
Yeah. Mark, is there any upside for a sustained period of recession or of record high interest rates, for just the average America? Any upside?
From interest rates, absolutely. First of all, I think this is a period of normalization. After experiencing the previous 15 years of record low and unusually low interest rates, that was not helpful for people on fixed incomes, many of whom like to sock their money away in safe savings accounts. And so we don't know where interest rates are going to level out, but I think they'll be lower from here, but higher compared to where they were before. So, for example, right now, it's easy to find, if you shop around for the best rate, we're Bankrate, when you're looking for a certificate of deposit, a high-yield savings account that provides an annual yield of 4 to 5%. And so that's pretty good. That's an upside.
Yeah, we've gotten signals of recession for 2 years now, from the index of leading indicators to the interest rate markets, but the numbers still do look good. Explain to us, Mark, what's going on here. Kind of square this away for us.
It's quite simple. The index of leading economic indicators overweights the nation's manufacturing sector. Manufacturing is very important, but it is the fact that the United States is dominated by services. That's what really powers our economy. And the manufacturing sector has been a victim of the weak global economy, where the U.S. has been really flexing its muscle compared to China, compared to Japan, compared to Germany. The GDP in the United States is leading the way among all those countries. That's why the International Monetary Fund upgraded its global outlook, mostly because of the strong U.S. this past week.
Yeah. All right, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. It's always good to see you, Mark. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jenna.
Well, helping heal invisible injuries. Up next, the daunting work of chaplains in war-torn Ukraine. Welcome back. Overseas tonight, the World Court of the United Nations is moving forward in the Russia-Ukraine genocide case. The International Court of Justice threw out a request by Ukraine to rule on whether the Russian invasion violated the 1948 Genocide Convention. Instead, the Hague will hear only a case in which Kyiv asked the ICJ to declare Ukraine did not commit genocide in eastern Ukraine. Russia claimed Ukraine was guilty of genocide as a pretext for the February 2022 invasion. Well, this month marks 2 years since the war there started. Many of the injured bear not only physical and visible wounds, but also unseen emotional pain. Ukrainian chaplains offer spiritual healing to those wounds. CBN contributor Chuck Holton reports on the growing demand for these caregivers for the soul.
This Ukrainian medic's GoPro camera video reveals the war's chaos. An artillery shell explodes near his car, wounding him before he can ensure his patient's safety. Despite his injuries, he persists in his mission of caring for comrades, highlighting these heroes' crucial role. Once the wounded arrive at the aid station, Army chaplains immediately comfort and pray for them.
We call them hospitaliers. They only work in hospitals, intensive care units, amputees, psychiatric clinics. And also there's narco clinics that we work with, and lots of soldiers do get addicted because of the stress PTSD that they face, and they cannot cope with it, so we need to work with them. They're struggling. Lots of them lost their families.
While medics can treat the physical injuries, emotional trauma persists. With a shortage of medics, chaplains often take on the responsibility, providing aid and healing to both soldiers and civilians. Many chaplains maintain strong personal connections to the area, which can intensify their challenges.
Lots of them have their families in occupied territory. At this moment, they cannot do anything to it. So we have problems. The chaplains I work with, they go front lines. We go all the way across the front line. In my team, we've got 2 women, both of us mothers of 5.
Christian Hickey, an American Green Beret and ex-police officer, relocated to Ukraine last year, committed to helping these chaplains.
Chaplaincy is not something that's been around at all in Ukraine. It was just officially established in 2022 after the war started. It had unofficially started in 2014. But now I sit on a board where I can actually have direct insight and give great advice on how the chaplaincy corps should work and help train those chaplains so they can go out and help soldiers who are seeking answers, who are looking for something, and this reveal Christ to them right there in the trenches.
Chaplains recognize the critical nature of their mission.
If a soldier is conscious, then we talk to them. We hold their hands. We try to take their attention away from their wounds. Medics like us because they like to work with chaplains because we stabilize them.
This mission is so important. It's the person on the ground, Russian or Ukrainian, who are fighting each other, who are dying, and who are needing some sort of help. We want to stand in solidarity, say, hey, we love you, we're here to support you, and to give them something that's everlasting. It's not something that's internal, not something that's going to go away after we leave.
What we want to do is we want to preach the pure gospel, just like pray to them, lead them to Jesus, take their hands and literally pray and they accept Jesus Christ in their hearts.
The wartime horrors can affect the chaplains as deeply as the soldiers. Katerina reflects on her emotions just after hearing of a friend's death.
If you ask me to describe what war is, I'd probably use one word to describe it. It's just a waste. It's just a waste of money or resources, a waste of lives, waste of where sometimes we run out of strength. It's just a waste of a whole country, and it's absolutely pointless. Absolutely pointless. At the end, nobody wins.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Ukraine.
And Katherine Senuk, who you saw in Chuck's story there, is a volunteer with the Ukrainian Military Chaplaincy Corps and joins us now in studio. Katherine, welcome. It's great to have you here with us. I want to start with you and your story. You're one of very few women in this unique position. How did you become a military chaplain?
Well, I wish there wouldn't be a need for a frontline chaplain, but Ukraine is facing such an enormous amount of intense aggression and plus we've got many women fighting. Up to 70,000 women right now are in armed forces of Ukraine, and so someone needs to provide care and counseling for them as well. And plus, we're talking about those who went through captivity, torture. So those are in need as well. So chaplaincy is also very important for civilians in front lines, because there's a lot of civilians who live there, very traumatized, as you probably might imagine. So how did I become a chaplain? We were just volunteering in the beginning, and then we saw a need for more than just material needs, more than just giving food. People were in need of something else, something more. And that's how our team, and I'm a pastor's wife. We've been in ministry for many years. And so it's not, we grasped or we felt the need right away. So we prayed and we decided to just go and do whatever we can, just make a difference.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of the things you've seen, but if you could go into detail on that. I know you're on the front lines regularly.
Well, I'm not sure where to start from. I've seen it all. I've seen something unimaginable that people, any human being, should not even witness. And so that's why it's important for me to be with those who are there all the time, be with them, eat with them, wear whatever they wear, live wherever they are, where they live, something that Jesus would definitely do.
I know obviously you're dealing with the atrocities of war. The things you're seeing are just astounding, I'm sure. But you do say there are stories of hope and stories of redemption coming from the front lines.
Of course. There's tens, hundreds stories. In fact, I have multiple stories where we were saved, and we know it's nothing else but supernatural, nothing else but God saving us. And in fact, I'm a chaplain for quite a few girls that are combat medics, and a couple of them went through a suicidal mode, but now they're out of it, and they're more hoping for a better future because of the power of the gospel, and because of there was somebody who could have listened to them and provide them care. Just sometimes even just be alongside.
Yeah. And so you're in Washington now. Tell us what you're doing here in the advocacy piece of this.
Sure. I'm a part of a Ukrainian week here in Washington, D.C. It's an organization that every year, a coalition of NGOs and evangelical churches from the United States, from Ukraine, delegation Ukraine, and United States, we come together in Washington, D.C., gather every February. In fact, the first one was in 2022, just a couple of days before the full invasion. I wasn't there. But right now we're a part of this week. We're meeting. There was over 150 different meetings in the Congress, members of the Congress, church leaders, chaplaincy forum. I was a part of a chaplaincy forum. There was even a meeting with Mike Johnson, Speaker of the Congress. Yeah, it was a very brotherly and very Christian, wonderful meeting. Yeah. And so there was lots of events.
That's great. That's great to hear. Well, we appreciate what you're doing. Unfortunately, we're out of time on our show tonight. But thank you for what you're doing in Ukraine and just the hope that you're bringing to these people. It's inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thank you for support.
We'll be right back after this. As the war in Gaza rages on, Israel's Forestry Service is helping to create a living memorial for the hundreds killed at the music festival on October 7th. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
As this year's Tu B'Shvat holiday comes under the shadow of war and death, those responsible for Israel's forests want to focus on new life.
Everyone is welcome here. And we want this area also to have infrastructure for leisure and recreation and symbol of life, and also tell the story of what had happened here, because what had happened here can never happen again. This is something that is beyond human understanding, and this is what we want this place to symbolize.
Here in this beautiful park where flowers are blooming, more than 300 trees were planted today by relatives of those who were murdered at the Nova Music Festival.
We came here today to plant trees for them
to remember them, to give them the respect. We are deeply sad, and we feel that our hearts are taken away from us.
Moran Cohen lost her brother Benjamin Cohen that day.
He was a very good person. He was full of giving and helping other people. That was his way.
Along with a number of his friends.
My brother and his friends were 27. They were 5 friends together. The trees are planted next to each other. Also, they are buried in the same cemetery where we live.
One of those friends included Natalie Amar's brother and Vera Moshe's son, Eden David Moshe.
He was very, very kind. He loved people. He was very good uncle to our kids. He loved life. Ben, Tamar, Dor, and Iftach were very, very best friends with Eden. They raised together in the same school, high school. They finished school together. They were friends during all life.
Eden and his friends had looked forward to the music festival for a long time.
This is what we have left to do, to remember, to tell who wants to hear about who he was, how perfect and special he was in life and also in death.
Natalie says it's hard to be there, but it's important for people to remember and to understand the truth.
It's not fair for us, the families, to see the hate around the world against Israel. This is, I think, the message every person in Israel wants to scream to the world. We are the good people, they are the evil people.
By the trees, we symbolize that the state of Israel is here to stay, and that's how we see it. And that's why we decide to celebrate life due to those horrific actions that were done here by Hamas, and to tell them, you can never break our spirit. We will keep on planting, we will keep on the life here in Israel.
Julie Stahl, Re'im Park, site of the Nova Music Festival, Southern Israel.
Finally tonight, early spring or more winter. Groundhogs are making their predictions today. With the help of his handlers, Punxsutawney Phil made his yearly prediction to a crowd of thousands gathered at Gobbler's Knob in Pennsylvania. Spoiler alert, he did not see his shadow.
Glad tidings on this Groundhog Day. An early spring is on the way.
All right, the last time Phil predicted an early spring was 2020. That's going to do it for Faith Nation. Have a great night.